The gunfire had stopped. Catherine Langford stood in the snow outside her farmhouse, blood running hot down her left shoulder, the Winchester still warm in her trembling hands. 3 of Silas Garrett's men lay dead at her feet. Dark stains bloomed beneath them, spreading slow like ink through water. Behind her, the barn smoldered where someone had tried to burn it. Black smoke rolled thick across the yard. The air tasted of gunpowder and ash. 20 feet away, Silas fell to his knees. Ida Thornton's shotgun blast had torn through his chest. Blood bubbled on his lips as he tried to speak. "Cat, I loved." Then he pitched forward into the crimson snow and moved no more. Catherine turned, saw Ida collapse beside Silas's body, the old woman's dress dark with her own blood. Saw Henry Monroe lying still near the barn. Saw Malcolm Pierce's team emerging from the tree line. Rifles lowered. The battle was over. Redemption Flats was free, but the cost— Catherine looked toward the road where Mrs. Henderson's wagon had disappeared hours ago, carrying Lily to safety. The child was alive, safe, far from this nightmare. That was what mattered. Catherine sank to her knees in the blood-stained snow and let the rifle fall from nerveless fingers. "It's done," she whispered to ghosts only she could see. "Thomas, Samuel, it's finally done." The Montana wind carried her words away into silence. 3 days earlier, none of this had seemed possible. 3 days earlier, Catherine had been standing on her porch, drinking coffee, watching the sunrise over Redemption Flats, believing the past was safely buried. She had been wrong. The past was coming for her. It had simply taken 3 years to find her address. Morning came to Redemption Flats the way it always did, slow and cold and without mercy. The sun crept above the eastern ridge, painting the snow-covered valley in shades of blue and gray and the particular colorlessness that comes before true dawn. Smoke rose from chimneys in thin vertical lines, perfectly still in the windless air. Catherine Langford stood on her porch watching that sunrise with the same expression she wore every morning. Flat, empty, the face of a woman who had forgotten how to feel anything that mattered. She was 42 years old and looked every day of it. The Montana winters had carved lines around her eyes and mouth, deep furrows that spoke of squinting against snow blare and gritting teeth against wind that could strip flesh from bone. Her hair, once dark as midnight, now carried streaks of gray that she made no effort to hide or dye. She wore it pulled back in a severe bun, practical and unattractive, the hairstyle of a woman who had given up caring what others thought of her appearance. Her hands wrapped around a tin cup of coffee were scarred and calloused, the hands of someone who worked hard and slept little. The right hand bore a particularly ugly scar across the knuckles, thick and ropey, the kind of mark left by a knife that had cut deep. Behind her, the cabin was dark and silent. Small, just 2 rooms and a loft. Barely enough space for one person to live, let alone 2. But Thomas had been dead for 3 years now, and Catherine had learned to appreciate the simplicity of solitude. The border collie at her feet stirred, lifting his grizzled head to look at her with eyes that held the patient wisdom of old dogs everywhere. Shepherd, 12 years old, gray around the muzzle, still faithful as the day Thomas had brought him home as a pup. "Morning, old man," Catherine said quietly. The dog's tail thumped once against the porch boards. That was all the conversation either of them needed. Catherine drank her coffee and watched the sun climb higher. Down in the valley, Redemption Flats was beginning to wake. She could see lights appearing in windows, hear the faint sound of a rooster crowing, smell wood smoke mixing with the clean scent of snow. From this distance, it looked peaceful, almost idyllic, the kind of small frontier town that people back east romanticized in dime novels and magazine illustrations. They had no idea. Catherine set down her cup and descended the porch steps. Her boots crunched through the snow as she walked toward the barn. Shepherd followed at her heels, moving stiffly in the cold but never falling behind. Loyalty was bred into his bones. The barn was warmer than the house. Animal heat and the sweet smell of hay. Catherine's mare, a sturdy buckskin named Clara, nickered softly when Catherine entered. 2 cows shifted in their stalls. Chickens clucked from their roost in the corner. This was Catherine's morning ritual. Feed the animals, muck the stalls, collect eggs. Work that required no thought, No emotional investment, nothing but the steady rhythm of physical labor. She found comfort in that predictability, found safety in routine. She was forking hay into Clara's manger when she heard the first horse approaching. Catherine's hands stilled. She stood motionless, listening to the sound of hooves crunching through snow coming from the direction of town. One rider, moving at an easy walk, not hurrying, either someone with legitimate business or someone confident enough not to care about announcing their approach. She set down the pitchfork and moved to the barn door. Her hand, moving without conscious thought, brushed against the revolver holstered at her hip. Always there, always loaded. She had not gone unarmed in 15 years. The rider crested the small rise between her property and the main road. Morning sunlight caught him in profile, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing the tin star of a town marshal on his chest. Catherine's tension eased fractionally. She stepped out of the barn. Silas? Silas Garrett reined in his horse 10 feet from the barn. He was 50 years old, with iron-gray hair and the kind of weathered face that suggested a lifetime spent outdoors. His eyes were pale blue, almost colorless in certain lights, and they studied Catherine with an expression that held something warmer than friendship, but more complicated than simple affection. "Morning, Cat." His voice was deep and steady, the voice of a man accustomed to being obeyed. "Didn't mean to startle you." "You didn't." He swung down from the saddle with the ease of a lifelong horseman. "Had breakfast yet?" "Don't need company, Silas." "I know, but I've got news you need to hear, and I'd rather tell you someplace warm." He tied his horse to the porch rail without waiting for permission. That was Silas, always assuming welcome, always taking liberties that Catherine allowed from him and no one else. She followed him into the cabin, knowing argument would be pointless. Silas had been coming by like this for 3 years now, ever since Thomas died. Sometimes with news, sometimes with supplies from town. Sometimes with nothing but concern on his face and the unspoken hope that Catherine might finally be ready to rejoin the world of the living. She was not, but she let him visit anyway. Inside, Catherine added wood to the stove and set the coffee pot to reheat. Silas settled into the chair at the small table as if he belonged there. Shepard curled up at his feet, accepting the marshal's presence with the same patient tolerance he showed everything. "So," Catherine said, not turning from the stove, "what's this news? Stranger came to town yesterday. Man named Malcolm Pierce. Says he's a cattle buyer out of Chicago." Catherine's hands paused in their work. Something in her chest tightened, though she could not have said why. And I don't believe him." Now she did turn. "Why not?" Silas leaned back in his chair, studying her with those pale eyes. "Because cattle buyers don't usually wear custom-tailored suits and carry $2,000 in cash. Because they don't ask questions about every property owner in the valley. Because they especially don't ask detailed questions about widows living alone on small ranches." The tightness in Catherine's chest spread to her throat. "He asked about me. He asked about several people, you included." Silas's expression hardened. "Cat, I know you've got reasons for keeping to yourself. I know there are things in your past you don't talk about. Thomas told me a little before he died. Not everything. But enough." Catherine turned back to the stove. Her hands had begun to shake, and she did not want Silas to see. "What did Thomas tell you? That you weren't always Catherine Langford, that you had another name, another life, that you came here to start over." He paused. "And that there were people who might come looking for you someday." The coffee pot began to boil. Catherine poured 2 cups with hands that had steadied through sheer force of will. She brought them to the table and sat down across from Silas. "Did this stranger give you any reason to think he's one of those people?" "No, but I've learned to trust my instincts about men, and my instincts say Malcolm Pierce is not what he claims to be." Catherine wrapped her hands around her cup, feeling the warmth seep into her cold fingers. Outside, the day was growing brighter. Inside, shadows seemed to deepen. "What do you want me to do?" "Be careful. Keep your eyes open. If he comes out here, don't talk to him alone." Silas reached across the table and laid his hand over hers. His palm was warm and rough and familiar. "And Cat, if you need help, you come to me. You understand, whatever trouble you're in, whatever past you're running from, you don't have to face it alone." Catherine looked at his hand covering hers. She thought about Thomas, who had held her hand the same way, who had promised the same protection, who had died anyway, leaving her more alone than she had ever been in her life. "I understand," she said, but she did not pull her hand away. They sat like that for a long moment, the silence between them filled with all the words they had never spoken and likely never would. Then Silas withdrew his hand and stood draining his coffee in one long swallow. "I should get back to town, but I'll be checking on you. And Kat." She looked up at him. "If this Malcolm Pierce comes calling you, send Shepard to fetch me. That dog knows the way." Catherine nodded. Silas gave her one last long look, then let himself out. She heard his horse's hooves crunching away through the snow, fading slowly until silence returned. She sat at the table and stared into her coffee cup. The dark surface reflected her face back at her, distorted and wavering. She looked old, tired, like a ghost haunting her own life. Shepard whined softly. Catherine reached down and scratched his ears. "Just us again, old man." The dog's tail thumped twice against the floor. Catherine rose and walked to the porch. She pried up one of the floorboards, reaching into the space beneath. Her fingers found the tin box she kept hidden there. She pulled it out and carried it back inside. The box held everything she had left from her former life. The bent Pinkerton badge. A photograph old and fading. A folded piece of paper covered in handwriting she had memorized long ago. She opened the box and looked at the photograph. 3 faces smiled up at her from 15 years in the past. Thomas younger and happier than she had seen him in the final years. Herself before grief had carved her face into something hard and angular. And between them a boy, 7 years old, dark hair, his father's eyes. Samuel. Someone had taken a knife to that photograph and scratched out Samuel's face. Deep gouges that obliterated his features completely, leaving only a ragged hole where her son's smile had been. Catherine had done that herself 3 years ago, in a moment of grief so profound she could barely remember it now. She had wanted to destroy every reminder of what she had lost. But in the end she could not bring herself to burn the photograph entirely. So she had mutilated it instead, leaving this grotesque reminder of the child who had burned to death while she listened to his screams. She closed the box and shoved it back under the floorboards. The day stretched before her empty and purposeless. She would feed animals and chop wood and pretend that this half-life she was living could continue indefinitely. She would ignore the warning Silas had brought and hope that Malcolm Pierce was exactly what he claimed to be. But in the deepest part of herself, in the place where truth lived, regardless of what lies, she told the world Catherine knew better. The past was coming for her. It had simply taken 3 years to find her address. The mining camp squatted in the foothills like a collection of broken teeth. Abandoned shacks leaned against each other for support, their walls gray with age and neglect. Tailings piles rose in artificial hills, poisoning the ground beneath them. Nothing grew here anymore. Nothing had grown here for 20 years. Catherine approached on foot, leading Clara through the snow. She had left the mare a half-mile back, tied to a dead pine, and covered the final distance in silence. The Winchester rested across her shoulders. Both revolvers rode heavy at her hips. She had brought every round of ammunition she owned. It would not be enough. She knew that. Had known it the moment she found Henry Monroe's riderless horse blood still wet on the saddle, the note tied with careful precision to the horn. 24 hours to bring the documents to the mining camp. Come alone, or the girl dies first, then her father. Catherine had no intention of coming alone, but she also had no allies left to bring. The sun stood high overhead, turning the snow to blinding white. Catherine moved from shadow to shadow, using the derelict buildings for cover. Her breath plumed in the cold air. Her heart beat steady and slow, the rhythm of a woman who had done this before, who had stalked prey through worse terrain than this. She reached the largest structure, what had once been the main office. Through a gap in the wall, she could see inside. Empty. Dust thick on every surface. No footprints in the grime. Wrong. The realization hit her a heartbeat before the voice spoke from behind. "Mrs. Langford, we've been expecting you." Catherine spun, bringing the Winchester up in one fluid motion. 3 men stood 15 feet away, rifles already aimed at her chest. They had come from behind the tailings pile, moving silent as smoke, while her attention was focused on the empty building. Professional. The man in the center smiled. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of face that would have been handsome if not for the scar bisecting his left eyebrow. "Easy now. We don't want trouble." Catherine's finger rested on the trigger. At this range, she could take one of them before they shot her, maybe two if she was fast and lucky. But the third would kill her, and then no one would be left to save Lily. She lowered the rifle, slowly. "Where's the girl?" "Safe, for now." The scarred man gestured with his rifle. "But you're going the wrong direction. Meeting's not here. It's back in town." Ice flooded Catherine's veins. "What?" "Silas thought you might not trust coming alone to a deserted camp. Too many places for an ambush." His smile widened. "So he changed the plan and sent us to make sure you got the message." Catherine's mind raced. If Silas had Lily in town, that meant he had never intended to meet here at all. This had been a diversion, a way to get Catherine away from Redemption Flats while he consolidated his position, which meant Lily had been in town all along. Close enough, Catherine could have reached her if she had not been stupid enough to fall for this obvious trap. "Where in town?" "Marshal's office. Courthouse basement, to be specific." The scarred man lowered his rifle. "He said to tell you you come unarmed. Walk right in the front door, try anything clever, and the little girl learns what fire feels like." The word struck Catherine like a physical blow. Fire! The same way Samuel had died. The same threat Malcolm Pierce had made 3 days ago in the hotel dining room. But this was Silas, the man who had held her hand across the kitchen table, who had protected her for 3 years, who had been Thomas's friend, or so she had believed. "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why is Silas doing this?" The scarred man shrugged. "Above my pay grade, lady. I just follow orders." He jerked his head toward town. "You want to save that kid, you better ride fast. Silas said he'd give you until sunset. That's maybe 4 hours from now." Catherine looked at the 3 men, looked at the empty mining camp, looked at the trap she had walked into like a fool. She had no choice. She mounted Clara and rode for Redemption Flats. Behind her, the 3 men watched her go. Then one of them spoke, voice carrying clear in the still air. "Think she'll make it in time. Don't know. Don't care." The scarred man spat into the snow. "Either way, this ends today." Catherine heard every word. She dug her heels into Clara's flanks and pushed the mare faster, snow flying up behind them in white clouds. The mining camp disappeared behind her. Ahead, Redemption Flats waited like a mouth, ready to swallow her whole. The town looked the same as always, false front buildings lining the main street, horses tied at hitching posts. People going about their daily business with the careful normalcy of those who knew something terrible was happening but had decided not to see it. Catherine rode straight down the center of the street. She had left the Winchester behind, hidden in the brush outside town. The revolvers, too. She came unarmed, as instructed, wearing nothing but the clothes on her back and the weight of 15 years of mistakes. People stopped to watch her pass. Their faces held a mixture of curiosity and pity and something that might have been fear. Mrs. Henderson clutched her daughter close and hurried inside the general store. Old Tom Briggs sat on the bench outside the saloon and shook his head slowly like a man watching a funeral procession. They knew. The whole town knew what was happening in the courthouse basement, and not one of them would lift a finger to help. Catherine understood. In a town like Redemption Flats, you survived by minding your own business, by keeping your head down and your mouth shut, by choosing the safety of ignorance over the danger of involvement. She had lived that way herself for 3 years. The courthouse stood at the end of the street, a 2-story brick building that served as both municipal office and jail. Silas's office occupied the ground floor. The basement held 2 cells rarely used, mostly forgotten. Catherine dismounted and tied Clara to the rail. Her hands were steady. That surprised her. She had expected fear, panic, the kind of trembling weakness that comes when you know you are walking to your own execution. Instead, she felt calm, almost peaceful, as if some part of her had been waiting for this moment since the day Thomas died. She climbed the courthouse steps and pushed open the door. The front office was empty. Silas's desk sat neat and organized, papers stacked precisely, inkwell capped, everything in its proper place. The man was meticulous to a fault, always had been. Catherine crossed to the basement door. It stood open, lamplight flickering up from below. She could hear voices, men talking in low tones, and beneath that softer, the sound of a child crying. Lily. Catherine descended the stairs. The basement was larger than it appeared from above. The two cells occupied one corner, iron bars, rusted but solid. The rest of the space held storage, crates and barrels and furniture, too broken to use but too valuable to throw away. 6 men waited for her. Catherine recognized 3 of them, deputies who worked for Silas on a rotating basis. The other 3 were strangers, hired guns by the look of them, hard-eyed and patient as wolves. And in the center, standing before the occupied cell, Silas Garrett. He looked older than he had that morning, tired, as if the weight of what he was doing had aged him years in a matter of hours. Catherine's eyes went to the cell. Lily huddled in the corner, her small body wrapped around itself. Her face was streaked with tears and dirt. When she saw Catherine, her expression transformed. Miss Catherine. Beside Lily, slumped against the wall, Henry Monroe. His face was swollen with bruises. One eye had closed completely. Blood crusted his split lip. But he was alive. Catherine felt something crack in her chest. Relief so intense it nearly drove her to her knees. "Henry, Lily, are you hurt?" "We're okay." Henry's voice came out thick and slurred. "Cat, I'm sorry. They came to the farm. I tried to fight, but there were too many." "Shh. It's not your fault." Catherine turned to Silas, met his pale eyes. "Let them go." "You know I can't do that." "Yes, you can. You have me." "That's what you wanted, isn't it? Let them walk out of here, and I'll give you whatever you need." Silas shook his head slowly. "It's not that simple anymore, Cat." "Then make it simple." "I would if I could." He gestured to one of the deputies. The man brought a chair, set it in the center of the basement. "Sit down. Please, we need to talk." Catherine did not move. "I'll stand." "Suit yourself." Silas dismissed the deputies with a wave. They filed up the stairs, boots heavy on wood. Only the 3 hired guns remained positioned at strategic points around the basement. Professional placement. Overlapping fields of fire. When they were alone, Silas spoke again. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Do you know why Thomas killed himself, Cat?" The question hit harder than a fist. Catherine's jaw clenched. "He was sick. Grief over Samuel. He couldn't live with what happened." "That's what you told everyone. What you told yourself." Silas moved closer. "But it wasn't true. Thomas killed himself because of me." Catherine's breath caught. "What are you talking about? He found out about my feelings for you. I was drunk one night, said things I shouldn't have. Told him I loved you, that I'd always loved you from the first day you came to Redemption Flats." Silas's expression twisted with pain. "He confronted me. We fought, not with fists, with words. And I said terrible things, Cat. I told him he didn't deserve you, that you would have been better off if he'd died instead of Samuel." Catherine's world tilted. "No. I found his body the next morning. The note he left, it wasn't just about Samuel. It was about us, about how he couldn't compete with a man who would burn the world down for you." Silas pulled a folded paper from his pocket, yellowed with age. "I kept it. I never showed you. I thought it would be kinder to let you believe the lie." He held out the paper. Catherine took it with numb fingers, unfolded it, recognized Thomas's handwriting immediately, the same careful script he had used for everything, even his final words. The note read, "Catherine, I can't do this anymore. Silas loves you in a way I never could, with absolute certainty, without doubt or fear. I've been living in the shadow of that love for 3 years, watching him look at you the way I used to. I thought I could compete. I thought if I just tried harder, loved you more completely, it would be enough. But I was wrong. You deserve someone who can give you everything. I can only give you grief. The memories of our dead son. The weight of my failures. Silas can give you a future. I can only give you more pain. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Thomas." Catherine's hands shook. The paper fluttered like a dying bird. She read it twice. 3 times. Each word driving deeper into her chest like a blade. "He thought you wanted Silas," she whispered. "He died thinking I loved someone else." "I know. And I've carried that guilt every day since. Silas's voice cracked. I didn't kill him, Cat, but I might as well have. My words, my feelings, they drove him to it. Catherine looked up. Tears blurred her vision. Then why are you doing this? Why hurt more people? Why threaten an innocent child? Because I'm tired of waiting. Silas moved closer still. 3 years, Cat. 3 years I've watched you grieve, watched you shut yourself away from the world, from me. I thought time would heal you, that eventually you'd see me standing here ready to give you everything Thomas couldn't. You're insane. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just a man who knows what he wants and has finally run out of patience. Silas gestured to the cell. Malcolm Pierce came to town 3 days ago, started asking questions. Questions about you, about Thomas, about what really happened 15 years ago. Catherine's blood turned to ice. How do you know Malcolm Pierce? Because I'm the one who told him where to find you. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Catherine stared at Silas, at this man she had trusted, this man who had sat at her kitchen table and held her hand and promised to protect her. Why? Because the documents Thomas found, the proof of corruption, it implicates me too, Cat. I'm not just a town marshal. I'm part of the network. I helped place criminals in witness protection. Helped them disappear, got paid well for it. Silas smiled, and it was a terrible thing to see. Malcolm is here to get those documents back, to make sure the truth stays buried, and I'm helping him because if the truth comes out, I hang right alongside everyone else. Catherine's mind reeled. Every piece of the puzzle was shifting, rearranging itself into a picture she could barely comprehend. You've been lying to me all these years. Not lying, protecting. There's a difference. Silas reached out as if to touch her face. Catherine jerked back. His hand fell. Cat, I never meant for any of this to happen. I just wanted you safe, wanted us to have a chance. But Thomas complicated things by finding that proof. And now Malcolm's here and the whole house of cards is coming down. So you kidnapped a child, beat her father, threatened to burn them alive. Catherine's voice shook with rage. That's your idea of protection. It's my idea of survival. Silas's expression hardened. You have a choice to make, Cat, right now. You can give Malcolm the documents. Let him destroy the proof. Let this whole mess disappear. Lily and Henry walk free. You and I can finally start the life we should have had. Or you can refuse, try to play hero, and I'll do exactly what Malcolm threatened. I'll burn that little girl alive while you watch, just like Samuel. And this time there won't be any coming back from it. Catherine looked at Lily. The child's face pressed against the bar's eyes wide with terror, then at Henry, who had struggled to sit upright ready to fight even though he could barely stand, then back at Silas. You loved me that much, more than you can possibly imagine. Then you understand why I can't give you what you want. Catherine's voice was steady now, clear. Because love doesn't threaten children. It doesn't manipulate and lie. What you feel for me, Silas, that's not love. It's possession. Obsession. Call it what you want. My offer stands, the documents for their lives. Catherine closed her eyes. She thought about Thomas, who had died believing she loved another man. She thought about Samuel screaming in the fire while she stood paralyzed with horror. She thought about 15 years of running and hiding and pretending the past could be buried deep enough to forget. She opened her eyes and looked at Silas. I burned them. Silence fell like a hammer. Silas stared at her. What? The documents. I burned them last night. Every page, every photograph, every scrap of evidence Thomas collected. Catherine's voice was flat, empty. There's nothing left to give you. Silas's face went pale. You're lying. Am I? Catherine pulled the leather satchel from inside her coat, the one she had dug up from beneath Thomas's grave. She opened it, empty except for ash. See for yourself. Silas snatched the satchel. His hands trembled as he poured the ash onto the floor. Gray powder mixed with charred paper fragments. Nothing legible, nothing salvageable. No, his voice cracked. No, you couldn't have. You're bluffing. I'm done bluffing, Silas. I'm done running. I'm done letting fear control my choices. Catherine took a step toward him. You want to kill that child? Go ahead, but it won't bring back what you've already lost. It won't make me love you. It won't undo the fact that Thomas died because you couldn't keep your feelings to yourself. Silas's hand went to his gun. Catherine did not move. For a long moment they stood frozen. Two people who had once been friends now facing each other across an unbridgeable chasm of betrayal and broken trust. Then gunfire erupted from upstairs. Shouts. The thunder of boots on floorboards, glass shattering. The hired guns spun toward the stairs, rifles coming up. Catherine moved. She grabbed Silas's wrist, twisting it away from his holstered gun. Her knee drove into his stomach. He doubled over with a grunt. Catherine brought her elbow down hard on the base of his skull. Silas dropped. The hired guns turned back toward her. Too late. Catherine dove behind a stack of crates as bullets chewed through wood. Splinters exploded into the air. She rolled, came up, running, zigzagging toward the cells. A woman's voice shouted from the top of the stairs. "Catherine, get down!" Catherine dropped flat. Shotgun blasts roared overhead. Two of the hired guns went down, screaming. The third tried to run. Another blast caught him in the back. He pitched forward and did not move again. Silence rushed in to fill the space left by violence. Catherine raised her head. At the top of the stairs stood Ida Thornton holding a double-barreled shotgun that looked older than she was. Smoke curled from both barrels. "Ida, told you I was too old to die quietly." The old woman descended the stairs with surprising speed. "Saw them bring the child and her father in through the back. Figured you'd come for them eventually. Thought you might need help." Catherine pushed to her feet. Her ears rang from the gunfire. Blood spattered her clothes, though none of it was hers. "The men upstairs? 3 more. All down. I brought friends." Ida gestured. 2 men Catherine recognized appeared at the top of the stairs. Townspeople, farmers, men with more courage than sense. Catherine turned to the cells. Henry was already working on the lock with a piece of wire he had somehow managed to keep hidden. His hands shook, but his face was set with determination. "Almost got it," he muttered. "Almost there." The lock clicked. The cell door swung open. Lily launched herself at Catherine, wrapping small arms around her waist with desperate strength. "I knew you'd come. I knew it." Catherine knelt and held the child close. Over Lily's shoulder she met Henry's eyes. "Thank you," Henry said quietly, "for not giving up on us." "Never." Catherine stood, keeping one hand on Lily's shoulder. "But we need to move. Silas won't stay down long, and there are more men in town who answer to him." Ida was already climbing the stairs. "Follow me. I know a way out through the back." They moved quickly. Catherine carrying Lily, now the child's weight barely registering. Henry limped behind them, one of the farmers supporting him. Ida led them through the courthouse's rear exit into an alley. The sun had dropped low in the sky. Long shadows stretched across the snow. Redemption Flats looked peaceful in the golden light, a lie of normalcy hiding rot beneath. "Where do we go?" Henry asked. Catherine looked at the town she had called home for 3 years, at the buildings and streets and people who had watched her walk to her potential execution without lifting a hand to help. Anywhere but here. They ran. Night fell before they reached Ida's boarding house, a rambling 2-story structure on the edge of town, half hidden by pine trees. Ida had owned it for 30 years, taking in travelers and drifters and anyone else who needed a roof over their head and did not ask too many questions. The building was dark when they arrived. Ida led them in through the back door, moving by memory through pitch-black hallways. She lit a lamp only when they reached the cellar, a low-ceilinged room filled with preserves and root vegetables and the earthy smell of potatoes. "We should be safe here for tonight," Ida said. "But come morning, Silas will tear this town apart looking for you." Catherine settled Lily on a makeshift bed of blankets. The child had not spoken since leaving the courthouse. Her eyes stared at nothing, seeing things Catherine hoped she would someday forget. Henry sat against the wall, breathing hard. His face had gone gray. Catherine examined his injuries by lamplight. Broken ribs at minimum, possibly internal bleeding. "You need a doctor." "Doctor's probably working for Silas." Henry coughed, winced. "I'll be fine." He would not be fine. But Catherine did not argue. There was no point. Footsteps sounded overhead. Everyone froze. Catherine's hand went to her hip, forgetting she had come unarmed. Ida grabbed a shovel leaning against the wall. The cellar door opened. A figure descended the stairs. Malcolm Pierce. Catherine lunged for the shovel. Ida stepped between her and Malcolm, hands raised. "Wait, he's with us." The hell he is. Catherine's voice was cold as winter. He threatened to kill Lily. He works for Silas. I know what he said in the hotel. Ida did not lower her hands. But I also know he's the one who sent word to me about the kidnapping. He's the reason I knew where to find you. Catherine stared at Malcolm. The man looked different than he had 3 days ago. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by rough work clothes. His face was haggard, older, a man carrying weight he could not set down. It's true, Malcolm said quietly. I helped Ida organize the rescue. I'm not your enemy, Mrs. Langford. You killed my son. I did. No denial, no excuses. 15 years ago, I set a fire that burned your cabin. I heard him screaming while the flames took him. I heard you screaming his name. I've heard those screams every night since. Catherine's hands clenched into fists. Every muscle in her body coiled tight, ready to spring. She could cross the distance between them in 2 steps. Her bare hands would be enough. She had killed men with less motivation. Then why are you still breathing? Because Silas threatened my daughter. Malcolm's voice cracked. I have a little girl, Sarah, 9 years old, lives in Chicago with her mother. When Silas found out about her, he sent men to watch her. Told me if I didn't help him get those documents, if I didn't come here and threaten you, Sarah would disappear. They'd make it look like an accident. So you threatened mine instead. I never meant to hurt the Monroe child. I just needed you scared enough to cooperate. Malcolm took a step closer. But then I saw her, saw the way you looked at her, the way she trusted you, and I realized I was doing to you exactly what was done to me, using a child as leverage, making someone else live my nightmare. Touching story, Catherine's voice dripped venom, doesn't change what you did. I know, nothing can change that. Malcolm reached into his coat. Slowly. Catherine tensed, ready to move. He pulled out a folded paper and held it out. But maybe this will help you understand what we're really dealing with. Catherine took the paper, unfolded it, read. It was a letter, addressed to Malcolm, written in careful script. Malcolm, if you're reading this, I've failed. Silas discovered I was investigating him. I don't have much time. The documents I gathered prove the witness protection scheme reaches all the way to Washington. Federal marshals, senators, maybe higher. Silas is just one small piece of a machine that's been running for 20 years. They've placed over 300 criminals in new identities, murderers, thieves, men who should have hung, all living as respectable citizens now. The corruption goes so deep I don't know who to trust anymore. I'm hiding the evidence under my grave. If something happens to me, get it to someone clean, someone outside the system. I'm trusting you with this because you're the only person who knows what they're capable of. You've seen them kill. You've watched them destroy lives. Don't let my death be for nothing. Thomas Langford. Catherine read the letter 3 times, each word burning itself into her brain. Thomas knew you, she whispered. Before. You worked together. We were both Pinkerton agents years ago, different offices, but we crossed paths occasionally. Malcolm's expression was haunted. When I left the agency when I was trying to disappear from my own past, Thomas helped me. Got me new papers, a fresh start. I owed him. So when he needed help investigating Silas, he came to you. Yes, but I was too scared. Too worried about protecting my own daughter. I told him I couldn't help. Malcolm's voice dropped to barely a whisper. 2 weeks later, I heard he was dead. Suicide, they said. But I knew better. I knew Silas had killed him, or driven him to it, which amounts to the same thing. Catherine looked at the letter again. At Thomas's handwriting, at the date in the corner, 3 weeks before his death. Why didn't you come forward? Why didn't you expose Silas then? Because I'm a coward. Simple? Honest. I chose my daughter's safety over justice, over honoring Thomas's memory, over doing what was right. Malcolm met her eyes. I've been living with that choice for 3 years. Waking up every morning knowing I let a good man die to protect my own family. It's been eating me alive. Silence settled over the cellar. Lily had fallen asleep on the blankets, exhausted by terror. Henry's breathing had grown shallow and labored. Ida stood guard at the stairs, shotgun ready. Catherine folded the letter and handed it back to Malcolm. So, what changed? Why help now? Because Silas made a mistake. He threatened your daughter the same way he threatened mine, and when I saw Lily's face when I imagined Sarah in that same position, something broke inside me. Malcolm took the letter and carefully tucked it back into his coat. I can't undo what I did to Samuel. I can't bring back Thomas, but I can stop Silas from destroying more families, from using more children as weapons. Noble sentiment doesn't make us allies. I know, but we have a common enemy. That's enough for now. Catherine wanted to argue, wanted to refuse his help and do this alone, but pragmatism won out over pride. She needed allies, needed every advantage she could get. Fine. What do you know about Silas's operation? Everything. Malcolm moved to the cellar table and spread out a map. The witness protection scheme uses redemption flats as a hub. About half the town's population are criminals with new identities. Murderers, bank robbers, con artists, all living peaceful lives under Silas's protection. How many people know? Everyone who matters. The legitimate townspeople turn a blind eye because Silas keeps things quiet. No crime, no violence, just enforced peace and the unspoken agreement that nobody asks questions. Ida spoke from the stairs. I've suspected for years. Seen too many people arrive with no past. Too many men with prison tattoos running general stores, but I kept my mouth shut because speaking up gets you killed. Or worse. Malcolm's finger traced a route on the map. There's an old mine shaft 3 miles north of town. Bodies go in. Nobody asks where they came from. I'd estimate at least 20 people have disappeared over the years. Anyone who threatened to expose the scheme. Catherine felt sick. And Thomas found proof of all this. Yes, names, dates, crimes. Original identities matched to new ones. It's all in those documents, or was before you burned them. I didn't burn them. Everyone turned to stare at her. Catherine allowed herself a small, bitter smile. I burned blank paper and mixed it with ash from the stove, made it look like destroyed documents, but the real evidence is still hidden. Malcolm's eyes widened. Where? Safe. For now. And it stays that way until I figure out what to do with it. Catherine, if Silas finds out you lied to him about burning those documents, he'll kill everyone you care about, starting with that child. I know. Catherine looked at Lily's sleeping form. That's why we need to move fast. End this before he has a chance to regroup. End it how we're 4 people against an entire town. 3.5, Henry interjected weakly. I'm not much use in a fight right now. Then we even the odds. Catherine turned to Ida. How many people in Redemption Flats hate Silas? How many would turn on him if they had the chance? Ida considered. Maybe a dozen. Townspeople who've lost family to Silas's cleanup operations, folks who want their town back. Gather them, quietly. Tell them to be ready at dawn. Ready for what? A reckoning. Malcolm shook his head. This is insane. Even with a dozen supporters, we're outgunned and outmanned. Maybe, but we have something Silas doesn't. Catherine met his eyes. We have the truth, and we're willing to die for it. That makes us dangerous. Before Malcolm could respond, a scratching sound came from upstairs, claws on wood. Then a soft whine. Shepherd. Catherine's heart clenched. She had not seen the dog since leaving the farm, had assumed he was safe hiding somewhere until she returned. Ida moved to the door, opened it a crack. Shepherd limped inside his gray coat matted with blood, a piece of paper tied to his collar with string. Catherine rushed to him. The dog collapsed against her legs, exhausted. She fumbled with the string, hands shaking. The paper came free. She unfolded it. Silas's handwriting. Neat and precise. Cat. Your dog came home looking for you. I sent him to deliver this message. You lied about the documents. I know because Malcolm told me everything after I threatened his daughter again. You have until dawn to bring me the real evidence. Meet me at your farm. Come alone. If you bring anyone, if you try any tricks, I'll burn your house down with Henry Monroe's daughter inside. Then I'll find Malcolm's daughter in Chicago. Then I'll kill every person in this town who ever showed you kindness. You've taken everything from me. My career, my reputation, any chance at happiness. Now I'll take everything from you. One way or another, this ends tomorrow. Choose wisely. S.G. Catherine read the note twice. Her hands had gone numb. Shepherd pressed against her legs, his warmth the only thing anchoring her to reality. He knows, she whispered. He knows I lied. He knows where I am. He knows everything. Malcolm's face had gone pale. Sarah. Oh, God, he'll really do it. He'll send men after Sarah. Ida reloaded the shotgun with grim efficiency. Then we have no choice. We give him the documents and hope he keeps his word. He won't. Catherine's voice was flat. Dead. Even if we give him everything, he'll kill us all anyway. Loose ends. We know too much. Then what do we do? Catherine looked down at Shepard. The dog's eyes met hers, loyal to the end, faithful despite injury and exhaustion and the certainty of more pain to come. She thought about Thomas, who had tried to do the right thing and died for it. About Samuel, whose only crime was being born to the wrong parents. About Lily sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, unaware that morning would bring fresh nightmares. She thought about the choice Thomas had faced, the same impossible choice that had driven him to put a bullet in his brain rather than live with the consequences of either decision. Expose the truth and destroy innocent lives, or bury it and let evil continue unchecked. Thomas had chosen death rather than make that choice. Catherine would not be so merciful to herself. She stood, moved to the table where Malcolm's map still lay spread, studied the layout of Redemption Flats, the streets, the buildings, the sight lines. Ida, gather your people. Have them ready by first light. What are you planning? To give Silas exactly what he wants. Catherine's finger traced a path from the boarding house to her farm. The documents. A confrontation. An ending. That's suicide. Maybe. Or maybe it's justice. Catherine turned to Malcolm. You said you owed Thomas, that you wanted to honor his memory. I do. Then I need you to do something for me. Something that might cost you everything. Malcolm swallowed hard, nodded. Catherine told him the plan, watched his face go pale, watched him struggle with the weight of what she was asking. Finally he spoke, voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Langford, what you're suggesting, it's not just dangerous. It's guaranteeing that people will die, innocent people. I know, but it's the only way to end this without letting Silas win. Catherine met his eyes. Thomas died trying to find a third option, a way to expose the truth without destroying lives. He failed. I'm not going to make the same mistake. What about Lily Henry, the others? We get them out first, before dawn. Send them north with Ida's people. By the time Silas realizes they're gone, it'll be too late. Malcolm was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small Derringer pistol. 2 shots. He laid it on the table. If we're doing this, you need to be armed. Catherine picked up the pistol. It fit easily in her palm, small, deadly, the weapon of last resort. She tucked it into her boot. Get some rest, she told the others. We move in 3 hours. What will you be doing? Catherine looked at Shepard, at the blood matting his gray fur, at the exhaustion in his eyes. Taking care of family. She gathered medical supplies and sat with the dog cleaning his wounds with gentle hands. Shepard bore it stoically, occasionally licking her wrist in reassurance. As she worked, Catherine whispered to him, words she had never spoken to Thomas, words she should have said to Samuel. I'm sorry for all of it, for dragging you into this life, for not being strong enough to protect the people I love, for all the choices that led us here. Shepard's tail thumped once against the floor. Catherine finished bandaging his wounds and sat back. The dog rested his head in her lap. His breathing was steady. He would survive, more than she could say for herself. She looked at Lily still sleeping peacefully. At Henry, his breathing shallow but regular. At Malcolm, sitting alone in the corner staring at nothing. At Ida standing guard with patient determination. These people were depending on her, trusting her to find a way through this nightmare. She would not fail them. Not this time. Catherine pulled out the letter Malcolm had shown her, Thomas's letter. She read it again by lamplight, memorizing every word. Then she noticed something, a faint mark in the corner of the page, barely visible. She held it closer to the lamp. Numbers, written in pencil so light they had nearly faded away. Coordinates. Catherine's breath caught. She grabbed Malcolm's map, found the location the numbers indicated. Her heart stopped. The coordinates led to a spot 3 miles north of town, where Malcolm had said the bodies were buried, where Silas disposed of anyone who threatened his operation. Thomas had known about the mass grave, and he had left one final piece of evidence there, something so damning that even burning the documents would not destroy it. Catherine stood abruptly. Shepard raised his head, alert. "Malcolm." He looked up. "Change of plans. We need to make a stop before dawn." "Where?" "The place you don't want to go." Understanding dawned in Malcolm's eyes, then horror. "The mine shaft. You think Thomas hid something there?" "I know he did." Catherine showed him the coordinates. "He was too smart to keep all the evidence in one place. This was his insurance, his guarantee that even if the documents were destroyed, the truth would still come out." "What kind of evidence survives being buried in a mass grave?" Catherine's smile was cold. "Terrible. The kind that doesn't burn." She began to gather supplies. Rope, lanterns, tools. The others watched in silence, understanding what she intended, understanding that this changed everything. Ida finally spoke. "You go down in that shaft, there's no guarantee you come back up." "I know." "Silas has it watched, probably has men stationed there right now." "I know that too." "Then you're walking into another trap." Catherine looked at the old woman, at the shotgun in her weathered hands, at the determination in her eyes. "Ida, everything about this has been a trap from the beginning. The only difference is now I'm walking in with my eyes open." She finished packing, checked the derringer in her boot, made sure it was loaded. Then she knelt beside Lily one last time, brushed hair back from the child's sleeping face. "Stay asleep, little one. When you wake up, this will all be over." She stood, looked at her unlikely allies, a murderer seeking redemption, an old woman who had seen too much, a wounded father fighting for his daughter. "If I'm not back by dawn, take Lily and run. Get her as far from here as possible. Don't look back." "And if you do come back?" Henry asked. Catherine checked the derringer one more time. "Then Silas Garrett is going to learn what it means to threaten the last thing I have left to lose." She turned and climbed the stairs. Shepard limped after her, refusing to be left behind. Together they walked out into the Montana night. Behind them the others began to prepare for rescue, for battle, for whatever dawn would bring. Above, stars burned cold and distant, indifferent witnesses to the choices of desperate people in a desperate place. The mine shaft waited in the darkness, 3 miles north, where bodies lay forgotten and secrets refused to stay buried. Catherine walked toward it with steady steps. The reckoning was coming. And this time there would be no running from it. The mine shaft opened like a wound in the frozen earth, 20 feet across, ringed with rotted timbers that groaned in the wind. No fence, no warning signs, just darkness descending into darkness, and the faint smell of decay rising from below. Catherine stood at the edge, holding a lantern high. The light barely penetrated 10 feet down before being swallowed by absolute blackness. Somewhere far below, water dripped with the patient rhythm of a clock counting down to midnight. Shepard pressed against her leg, growling low in his chest. The old dog sensed what Catherine already knew. Death lived in that hole, had lived there for years, accumulating quietly, while the town above went about its business and pretended not to know. Malcolm approached from behind his footsteps, crunching through snow. He carried rope coiled over his shoulder and a second lantern in his hand. His face was pale in the moonlight. 20 bodies, he said quietly, maybe more. Silas has been using this shaft for 15 years. Catherine tied one end of the rope around a timber support, tested its strength. The wood held, though it creaked ominously. "You don't have to come down with me." "Yes, I do." Malcolm began securing a harness around his waist. "Thomas died looking for proof. The least I can do is help you find it." They worked in silence, checking knots and equipment, with the careful precision of people who knew their lives depended on getting the details right. The night around them was still and cold. No wind, no sound except their breathing and the distant hoot of an owl. When everything was ready, Catherine lowered herself over the edge. The descent was slow, hand over hand, boots scraping against rock walls, slick with ice. The lantern swung from her belt, throwing wild shadows that danced and twisted like living things. 20 feet down, 30. The temperature dropped with each foot of progress until her breath plumed white and thick. At 40 feet, her boots touched something soft. Catherine looked down, fought the urge to vomit. Bodies, stacked like cordwood, some fresh enough that she could still make out faces, others reduced to bone and rotted cloth. The smell was overwhelming. sweet and sick and wrong in ways that bypassed thought and went straight to the lizard brain screaming to climb back up and never look back. She forced herself to breathe through her mouth, to think, to focus. "You all right?" Malcolm's voice echoed from above. "Fine." A lie, but a necessary one. Catherine began to search, moving carefully, trying not to disturb the dead more than she already had. Most of the bodies wore the simple clothes of townspeople, farmers, shopkeepers, people whose only crime had been knowing too much. She found what she was looking for near the bottom of the pile, a metal box, small, waterproof, the kind used to protect important documents from moisture and decay. It had been placed deliberately wedged between two bodies in a position that suggested someone had lowered it down here carefully, someone who knew exactly where it needed to be found. Thomas. Catherine's hands shook as she pulled the box free. The lock had rusted, but a sharp blow with the butt of her lantern broke it. The lid opened with a squeal of corroded metal. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, a leather journal and a collection of photographs. Catherine unwrapped the journal first, opened it to a random page, recognized Thomas's handwriting immediately. The entries were detailed, meticulous, names and dates and crimes. But more than that, Thomas had documented everything, every payment Silas received, every criminal he placed in witness protection, every person who disappeared when they threatened to talk. And on the last page, dated 2 days before his death, a single entry that made Catherine's blood run cold. "I know the truth now, about Samuel, about the fire. Silas didn't just cover up the attack on our cabin, he ordered it. I found proof in the old territorial marshal records, a telegram sent 3 days before the fire. Eliminate the Pinkertons, make it look accidental. Leave no witnesses. Signed S.G. Silas Garrett ordered our son's death. He killed Samuel to protect his operation, and when I confronted him, when I told him I had proof, he laughed. Said I'd never expose him because doing so would destroy Catherine. Said she'd already lost one child. Losing her freedom to prison for the crime she committed as an agent would finish her. He gave me a choice, suicide or watch Catherine hang. I chose the coward's way. I'm sorry, Cat, I'm so sorry. The proof is in the photographs. Sarah Millhouse, 1876. Find her. She knows everything. T.L. Catherine read the entry 3 times. Each word carved itself into her brain like a blade-cutting bone. Silas had ordered Samuel's death, not Malcolm. Malcolm had been the weapon, but Silas had pulled the trigger. And Thomas had known, had confronted Silas, had been given the choice between his own life and Catherine's freedom. He had chosen death rather than let her face the consequences of her past. Catherine's eyes stung. She pressed her forehead against the cold metal of the box and fought for control. Grief and rage warred inside her chest, each trying to drown the other out. Above, Malcolm called down. "Did you find anything?" "Yes." Her voice came out steady, flat, empty of everything except the terrible certainty of what needed to happen next. "Pull me up." The climb back took forever. Catherine held the metal box against her chest, protecting it from the rocks. When she finally reached the surface, she collapsed in the snow and let Malcolm haul the rope up behind her. He saw her face and knew immediately that something had changed. "What did you find?" Catherine showed him the journal, watched his expression transform as he read Thomas's final entry. "Oh, God," Malcolm's voice cracked. "I didn't know. I swear to you, Mrs. Langford, I didn't know Silas ordered it. He told me it was a rival gang, that they wanted the Pinkertons dead because you'd been investigating them. I never questioned it because I was too focused on survival to ask questions." "I believe you." Catherine's words were ice. "But it doesn't matter anymore. Silas killed my son. He killed my husband. He's threatened Lily. And now I'm going to kill him. How?" Catherine pulled out the photographs from the metal box, spread them in the snow, images of men in suits shaking hands, documents with official seals, faces Catherine recognized, federal marshals, senators. One photograph showed a younger Silas Garrett standing beside a man in an expensive suit, both smiling at the camera. "Who is that?" Malcolm pointed at the suited man. "United States Marshal William Hendricks. He runs the entire witness protection program." Catherine gathered the photographs carefully. Thomas found proof that the corruption goes all the way to Washington. That Hendricks has been selling protection to criminals for 20 years. That Silas is just one small piece of a machine that touches every territory between here and the capital. If you expose this, you'll destroy more than Silas. You'll bring down dozens of lawmen, ruin hundreds of lives. I know. Catherine tucked the photographs back into the box. But Thomas was right. Some secrets are too big to stay buried. They rot everything they touch. Malcolm was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke, his voice heavy with the weight of acceptance. What do you need me to do? Help me get back to town. Help me prepare for what comes at dawn. Catherine met his eyes. And if I die, make sure this evidence reaches someone who can use it, someone outside the system, someone clean. There's no such thing as clean, not when corruption goes this deep. Then we make do with the least dirty option we can find. Catherine stood brushing snow from her coat. Thomas died trying to expose this. I won't let that death be meaningless. They began the walk back toward Redemption Flats. Behind them, Shepard tried to follow, but the old dog's legs gave out after only a few steps. He collapsed in the snow, whimpering. Catherine turned back, saw the blood seeping through the bandages she had applied earlier. The wounds from Silas's message reopened by the journey to the mine shaft, too much for an old body to bear. She knelt beside him in the snow. Not you too, old man. Shepard's tail thumped weakly. His eyes held hers with perfect trust. You did good. You warned me. You saved us. Catherine's voice cracked. Now rest. The dog sighed, laid his head on her knee. His breathing slowed, then stopped. His eyes remained open, staring up at her with the same loyal devotion he had shown every day of his life. Catherine closed those eyes gently. Thank you, boy, for everything. Malcolm approached quietly. We should bury him. No time. Catherine stood. Her legs felt unsteady. Silas will be moving at dawn. We need to be ready. But she took off her coat and laid it over Shepard's body. A small gesture, inadequate, but all she could offer. I'll come back for you, she whispered to the still form. I promise. They walked on through the darkness. Catherine felt the cold now without her coat, felt the absence of Shepard at her heels, felt the weight of every loss accumulating like snow on a roof, waiting for the moment when the structure could no longer bear the burden. Above, stars burned cold and distant, indifferent witnesses to the choices of desperate people in a desperate place. The mine shaft waited behind them, Shepard waited beside it, and ahead, Redemption Flats waited like a mouth ready to swallow them whole. Ida's boarding house was dark when they returned, but inside preparations were underway. 12 townspeople had gathered in response to Ida's call, farmers mostly, men and women who had lost family to Silas's cleanup operations, folks who wanted their town back but had been too afraid to act alone. Now, with Catherine's return, that fear transformed into something harder, something sharp enough to cut. Catherine laid out the plan with brutal efficiency. No room for sentiment, no false hope, just cold, tactical reality. Silas expects me at my farm at dawn. He'll have men positioned around the property, probably a dozen or more. He wants the documents, but more than that, he wants to make sure no one walks away from this alive. One of the farmers, a man named Jacob, whose wife had disappeared 3 years prior, spoke up. So we're walking into a massacre. Yes, unless we arrive first, set our own trap. Catherine unfolded Malcolm's map. There are 3 approaches to my farm, north through the woods, east along the creek. South from the main road, we split into 3 groups. Take position before Silas arrives. When he commits his forces, we hit him from all sides. That's suicide, another voice objected. We're farmers, not soldiers. I know. That's why anyone who wants to leave should go now. No judgment, no shame. What I'm asking, it's not fair and it's not safe, and some of you won't survive. No one moved. Catherine felt something tighten in her chest. These people, these ordinary, terrified, decent people, were willing to die for the chance at justice, for the hope that their town could be clean again. She would not waste their sacrifice. All right, Jacob, you take 5 people north through the woods. Stay hidden until you hear my signal. Malcolm, you take 3 east along the creek. Same orders. Ida, you and the remaining 3 come with me from the south. We'll be the visible force, the bait. What about the children? Ida asked. Lily and any others we need to protect. Get them out before we move. Send them north with someone you trust absolutely. Tell them to ride hard and not stop until they reach Fort Benson. That's a 2-day ride. I know, but it's the only place I trust to keep them safe. Catherine looked at each face in turn. If this goes wrong, if we all die here, those children will be the only ones left who know the truth. They'll be the ones who have to finish what we started. Henry Monroe struggled to his feet from where he had been resting in the corner. His face was still swollen from the beating, but his eyes were clear. I'm coming with you. Henry, you can barely stand. Doesn't matter. Lily's my daughter. If you're fighting to protect her future, I'm fighting beside you. He coughed, winced, but remained upright. Besides, you need every gun you can get. Catherine wanted to argue, wanted to order him to stay behind where he would be safe. All right, but you stay with Ida's group. All right, but you stay with Ida's group. And if things go bad, you run. Promise me. I promise. A lie. They both knew it. But sometimes lies were all you had left to give. The groups began to organize, checking weapons, loading rifles, passing around ammunition with the grim efficiency of people who knew most of it would end up buried in flesh before the day was done. Catherine found Malcolm standing alone by the window staring out at the pre-dawn darkness. Second thoughts, she asked. Third and fourth thoughts. He turned to face her. Mrs. Langford, there's something I need to tell you. About Samuel. Catherine's jaw tightened. I know everything I need to know. No, you don't. Malcolm pulled a photograph from his pocket. Old, creased. The image showed a young boy, dark hair. Thomas's eyes. I kept this all these years. I don't know why. Maybe to remember, maybe to punish myself, but I want you to have it now. Catherine took the photograph with numb fingers. Samuel, age 7, smiling at the camera with the innocent joy of a child who thought the world was fundamentally good. Where did you get this? From the cabin, after the fire. I went back the next day. Found it in the ruins. It had survived somehow, protected by a metal frame that didn't burn all the way through. Malcolm's voice cracked. I should have given it to you back then, should have confessed everything, but I was too much of a coward. Catherine stared at the photograph, at her son's face, unmarred, whole, not scratched out like the image she had mutilated in her grief. Thank you, the words came out barely above a whisper, for keeping him safe. I didn't keep him safe. I killed him. No, Silas killed him. You were just the weapon he used. Catherine carefully tucked the photograph inside her coat close to her heart. But you have a chance now, to save another child, to make Samuel's death mean something. I don't deserve redemption. None of us do. We just have to try anyway. Outside, the sky was lightening. Gray dawn crept across the valley, turning the snow from black to white. The world was waking, and with it came the certainty of violence. Catherine gathered her weapons, the Winchester, both revolvers, the Derringer still hidden in her boot. Every round of ammunition she owned. It would not be enough, but it would have to do. Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Miss Catherine. What's happening? Catherine climbed the stairs and knelt before the child. Lily, I need you to be very brave. Can you do that for me? I think so. Good, because you're going on a trip, Mrs. Henderson is going to take you somewhere safe, somewhere far away from here. What about you? I have to stay here. I have something important to finish. Lily's lower lip trembled. Are you coming back? Catherine wanted to lie, wanted to promise that everything would be fine, that she would see Lily again, that this nightmare would end with happy reunions and peaceful futures. But she had made too many false promises already. I don't know, sweetheart, but I need you to be strong. Whatever happens, you keep going. You grow up. You become someone good, someone kind. Can you promise me that... Lily nodded, tears streaming down her face. Then she threw her arms around Catherine's neck and held on with desperate strength. Catherine hugged her back, memorizing the feel of this small body against hers, the warmth, the trust, the hope that somewhere, somehow children could still believe in happy endings. I love you, Miss Catherine. The words hit like a bullet. Catherine's breath caught. She had not heard those words since Samuel died, had not allowed herself to feel them, to accept them, to acknowledge that love meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant pain. But now, with this child in her arms and dawn breaking outside and death waiting in the snow, she could not hold back anymore. I love you too, Lily. More than you know. She released the child and stood. Mrs. Henderson waited at the bottom of the stairs, a kind woman who had lost her own daughter to influenza 3 winters past. She took Lily's hand gently. "I'll keep her safe, Mrs. Langford. You have my word." "Thank you." Catherine watched them leave through the back door, watched Lily look back one last time, her small face framed by the doorway, before disappearing into the gray morning. Then she turned to face the others, to face what came next. "It's time." They moved out in groups, silent, purposeful, spreading through the town like ghosts, taking positions, waiting for the signal that would transform this quiet valley into a battleground. Catherine led Ida and Henry south through the main street. The town was still asleep. Windows dark, streets empty. Soon people would wake to find their world forever changed. She hoped some of them would understand why. They reached Catherine's farm as the sun broke the horizon. The cabin stood dark against the snow, smoke rising from the chimney where Catherine had left a fire burning yesterday. Her livestock moved restlessly in the barn, sensing tension in the air. No sign of Silas yet, but he would come. The sun was rising, and with it came the appointed hour. Catherine positioned Ida and Henry behind the barn, gave them clear sight lines to the covenant. Then she walked into the open, standing alone in the yard where Silas would expect to find her, waiting. The minutes stretched. The sun climbed higher. Catherine's breath plumed white in the cold air. Then she heard it. Hoofbeats. Many horses, coming from 3 directions at once. Silas had brought his entire force. 15 riders emerged from the tree line. They spread out in a loose semicircle surrounding the farm. Professional deployment. No gaps, no weak points. Silas rode at the center on a gray gelding. He looked tired, older than he had yesterday. A man who had not slept, who had spent the night wrestling with choices that would define the rest of his life. He reined in 30 feet from Catherine. Close enough to talk, far enough to react if she tried anything. "You came alone." His voice carried clear across the snow. "That was smart." "Where's Malcolm?" "On his way here. I let him live long enough to help set this up. He's bringing the girl back from Fort Benson. Seems Mrs. Henderson's wagon had an unfortunate accident on the road." Silas's expression was flat, empty. "Lily will be here within the hour, and then you'll give me what I want, or I'll kill her in front of you." Catherine's blood turned to ice. "You're lying." "Am I?" Silas gestured to one of his men. The rider tossed something into the snow at Catherine's feet. A rag doll. Lily's doll. The one she had been clutching the night of the siege. Catherine's world tilted. "No." "I told you, Cat. I know every trick." "Did you really think I'd let that child escape? I had men watching every road out of town." Silas dismounted, walked forward with slow, deliberate steps. "You have the documents. I know you do. The coordinates in Thomas's letter led to the mine shaft. You found his journal, his proof. Now you're going to give it to me. And if I don't, then Malcolm dies. The girl dies. And Henry Monroe hiding behind that barn with Ida Thornton, they die too. I have men with rifles trained on them right now. One signal from me and everyone you care about bleeds out in the snow." Catherine's hands clenched into fists. She had positioned Ida and Henry for defensive advantage, but Silas had anticipated that, had countered before she even made her move. "You thought you were so clever," Silas continued. His voice was soft, almost sad. "Splitting your forces, setting ambushes. But Cat, I've been doing this for 20 years. I know every trick, every tactic. You're using strategies I taught Thomas, and Thomas learned them from me." "Then why haven't you just taken the documents by force?" "Because I still love you." The words hung in the air like a confession. "Even now, even after everything. I still hope you'll choose to give them to me willingly, that we can end this without more bloodshed." Catherine laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "You killed my son. You drove my husband to suicide. You're threatening an innocent child. And you think I'll just hand over the proof because you claim to love me." "I don't claim it. I do love you. That's the tragedy here, Cat. Everything I've done, every terrible choice I've made, it's all been for you, to protect you, to keep you safe, to give us a chance at happiness. This isn't love, Silas. It's madness." "Maybe they're the same thing." He took another step closer. "Last chance, Cat. Give me the documents. Let me destroy them. We can still walk away from this. Start over somewhere new, somewhere clean." Catherine reached into her coat, pulled out the metal box. Silas's eyes locked onto it with desperate hunger. "You want the truth." She opened the box, pulled out Thomas's journal. "Here it is. Every crime, every name, every dollar you took to betray your oath. Give it to me." "No." Catherine's voice was steel. "I'm going to read it out loud, right here, so everyone knows what you've done, what you really are." Silas's hand moved to his gun. Catherine's hand dropped to her boot. Her fingers found the derringer hidden there. For one frozen moment they stared at each other across 30 feet of snow. Two people who had once been something like friends now facing each other across an unbridgeable chasm of betrayal and broken trust. Then Catherine made her choice. She pulled the derringer and fired. Both shots. As fast as she could pull the trigger, the small-caliber bullets hit Silas in the chest. He staggered backward, shock on his face. Blood bloomed across his shirt. But he did not fall. His revolver came up, steadied despite the wounds. "Wrong choice, Cat," he fired. Catherine felt the impact before she heard the shot, a hammer blow to her left shoulder that spun her around and dropped her to her knees. The empty derringer fell from nerveless fingers. Around them the world exploded into violence. Gunfire erupted from 3 directions, Jacob's group from the north woods, Malcolm's team from the creek, the ambush Catherine had set, triggered by her first shots. Silas's men spun toward the attack's rifles coming up. Return fire crackled across the valley. Snow kicked up in white fountains. Men screamed, horses reared, but Catherine saw none of it. Her entire focus was on Silas advancing toward her with slow, deliberate steps. Blood dripped from his chest with each movement, leaving a trail of crimson in the pristine snow. His face was pale but determined. "I didn't want this." His voice was fading, weak. "I wanted us to be happy." Catherine fumbled for her revolver with her good hand. Too slow, too clumsy. The pain in her shoulder was blinding. Silas kicked the gun away, stood over her with his revolver pointed at her head. "Any last words?" "Yes." Catherine met his eyes. Blood ran down her arm, pooled beneath her in the snow. "You were never good enough for him. For Thomas. You pretended to be his friend, but you were always jealous, always wanting what he had. And when you finally got me, when Thomas was dead and I was alone, you realized I was never yours to begin with. I never will be." Silas's finger tightened on the trigger. "Then we die together." The shotgun blast came from the side. Both barrels, close range. Silas's body jerked sideways as buckshot tore through his ribs. He stumbled, turned, brought his gun around toward the new threat. Ida Thornton stood 20 feet away, the smoking shotgun in her weathered hands. Her dress was dark with blood from multiple wounds, but her eyes were fierce and clear. "Nobody threatens children in my town," she said. Silas fired. The bullet caught Ida in the chest. She dropped to her knees, but her finger was still on the trigger. The shotgun roared again as she fell. The blast caught Silas full in the chest, lifting him off his feet and throwing him backward into the snow. He landed hard, tried to rise, failed. Catherine dragged herself across the snow to him. Every movement sent fresh agony through her shoulder, but she had to see, had to know it was over. Silas lay on his back, staring up at the morning sky. Blood bubbled on his lips. His breathing was shallow and labored. "Cat," his voice was barely a whisper, "I really did love you." Catherine looked down at him, at this man who had killed her son, who had driven her husband to suicide, who had threatened everyone she cared about in the name of twisted devotion. "I know, Silas, but love doesn't destroy. What you felt was poison. Does it matter now?" "No, I suppose it doesn't." His hand reached up, trembling. Catherine thought he was reaching for her. Instead, he touched his chest where blood was spreading across his shirt. "Tell Thomas. I'm sorry." "Tell him yourself." Silas tried to smile. Failed. His hand fell back into the snow. His eyes stayed open, staring at nothing. Catherine closed them. "Goodbye, Silas." She turned toward Ida. The old woman had collapsed face down in the snow. Catherine crawled to her, ignoring the screaming pain in her shoulder. "Ida, Ida, stay with me." She rolled Ida over gently. The old woman's eyes fluttered open. Blood stained her teeth. "Did we win?" Catherine looked around. The gunfire was dying down. Silas's men were fleeing or surrendering. Jacob's group was taking prisoners. In the distance, she could see men emerging from the creek approach, rifles lowered. "Yes, we won," Ida smiled. "Good. That's good." Her hand found Catherine's, gripped with fading strength. "Take care of that little girl, Cat. Give her the life we couldn't give our own children." "I will, I promise." "And Cat, forgive yourself. For Samuel, for Thomas, for all of it. They wouldn't want you carrying that weight forever." Catherine's eyes stung. "I don't know how." "You learn, one day at a time, one choice at a time." Ida's grip loosened. "Now go. People need you." Her hand fell away. Her eyes closed. And Ida Thornton, who had lived in Redemption Flats for 30 years and seen every secret it held, finally found peace. Catherine knelt beside the body of the woman who had saved her life and let the tears come. Around her, the battle was ending. Men were throwing down weapons. Horses were being caught. The wounded were being tended to. One of Jacob's men appeared at her side. "Mrs. Langford, you're hurt." "Malcolm, where's Malcolm?" The man's face darkened. "Fell protecting the courthouse approach. Held off 5 of Silas's men so we could move into position. He didn't make it." "Lily? Where's Lily?" "Safe. Mrs. Henderson got her to Fort Benson hours ago. Malcolm made sure of it before the end." Relief flooded through Catherine so intensely it nearly knocked her over. "Thank God. Come on. Let me help you up. We need to get that shoulder looked at." Fixed instance, number 1. The farmer pulled her to her feet. Catherine swayed the world, swimming in and out of focus, but she remained standing. "Henry," she said. "Where's Henry Monroe?" Fixed instance, number 2. The man's expression darkened. He pointed toward the barn. Henry lay in the snow beside the building. 2 of Jacob's men knelt beside him, but their postures told Catherine everything she needed to know. She stumbled toward him, fell to her knees at his side. Henry's eyes were open but unfocused. Blood soaked his shirt from multiple wounds. He had taken bullets meant for Ida, had thrown himself between her and Silas's men to buy her the seconds she needed to reload. "Henry," Catherine took his hand. "Hold on. We'll get you help." Too late. His voice was wet, labored. "Cat, listen. Lily, I'll take care of her. I swear it. Tell her," he coughed. Blood spattered his lips. "Tell her I loved her. Tell her about her mama. Don't let her forget us. Never, I promise. And, Cat, thank you for giving me something to fight for." At the end, his grip on her hand loosened. His breathing stopped. His eyes remained open, staring up at the sky with the same peaceful expression Silas had worn. Catherine closed his eyes. "Rest easy, Henry. You were a good father. A good man." She stood slowly. The battlefield was quiet now. The last of Silas's men had been rounded up. The wounded were being treated. The dead were being counted. 7 of Catherine's people had fallen, including Ida and Henry. Too high a price. But they had won. Redemption Flats was free. Fixed instance, number 3. Catherine looked at Jacob. "Bring me pen and paper. I need to write letters to the federal marshals, to the newspapers, to everyone who needs to know what happened here. You need a doctor first. After. The letters come first, before someone tries to bury this again." Jacob nodded and went to find supplies. Catherine stood alone in the yard, surrounded by bodies and blood, and the evidence of choices made and prices paid. The sun climbed higher, turning the snow from gray to blinding white. She pulled out the photograph Malcolm had given her. Samuel's face smiled up at her, unchanged by time or tragedy. "I did it," she whispered. "I stopped him. I protected Lily. I exposed the truth." The wind rustled through the bare trees. Somewhere in the distance, a crow called out. Catherine tucked the photograph back against her heart and walked toward the courthouse to begin the long work of justice. Behind her, the bodies waited in the snow, Silas and Ida lying a dozen feet apart, enemies in death as they had been in life. The reckoning was done. 3 days later, federal marshals arrived from Denver, hard-eyed men who listened to Catherine's testimony with stone faces and careful note-taking. They arrested 12 townspeople based on the evidence in Thomas's journal, released 40 whose crimes had been minor or who had served their time in other ways. The rest they left in legal limbo, neither free nor imprisoned, just waiting. Catherine spent those 3 days in a fog, moving from task to task without thought, burying bodies, answering questions, providing testimony. The doctor from the neighboring town dug the bullet out of her shoulder and stitched her up with grim efficiency. The wound was serious but survivable. She would carry a scar, would never have full range of motion in that arm again, small prices considering what she had lost. On the 4th day, a wagon appeared on the road. Catherine was sitting on what remained of her porch drinking coffee and watching workers repair the barn when she saw it approaching. Her heart lurched. Mrs. Henderson drove the wagon, and beside her, a small figure with dark hair. Lily. The child jumped down before the wagon had fully stopped and ran across the yard. She hit Catherine hard enough to nearly knock her over, small arms wrapping tight around her waist. "You came back, you came back." Catherine held the child with her good arm, felt something crack inside the emptiness that had filled her since the battle. Not healing. Not yet. But the beginning of something that might someday become peace. "I promised, didn't I?" Lily pulled back. Her eyes searched Catherine's face. "Papa." Catherine's throat closed. She knelt slowly, ignoring the protest from her wounded shoulder, met Lily's eyes. "No, sweetheart, your papa didn't make it." She had rehearsed this moment in her head 100 times, had tried to find words that would make the loss easier to bear. But looking at Lily's face, at the hope dying in her eyes, Catherine realized there were no easy words for this. "He was very brave," she continued. "He fought to protect all of us, and at the end he asked me to take care of you, if that's what you want." Lily's lower lip trembled. Can I say goodbye?" Catherine's eyes burned. "Of course." She led Lily to the small cemetery plot behind the cabin, fresh graves marked with simple wooden crosses, Ida Thornton, Henry Monroe, the 7 others who had fallen in the battle. Catherine knelt beside Henry's grave with Lily. The child was silent for a long moment, then she spoke, her voice small and broken. "Papa, I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough." "You were very brave," Catherine said softly. "Your papa told me so. He was so proud of you." "Did it hurt when he died?" The question hit Catherine like a fist. She wanted to lie, to say it had been quick and painless. But Lily deserved the truth. "Yes, it hurt, but he said it was worth it, because he knew you would be safe." Lily nodded. Tears streamed down her face, but she made no sound, just knelt in the snow and stared at the grave of the only parent she had ever known. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small carved horse, wooden, roughly made, the kind of toy a father might whittle for his daughter on long winter evenings. "Papa made this for me last Christmas." Lily placed it carefully on the grave. "So he won't be lonely." Catherine's vision swam. She put her arm around Lily's shoulders and let the child cry. Let her grieve without words or comfort or the false promise that everything would be all right, because it would not be all right. Not for a long time, but they would survive together. After a while, Lily's tears slowed. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and looked up at Catherine. "Miss Catherine, will you really be my mama now?" The question struck deep. Catherine thought about Samuel, about all the years she had told herself she could never be a mother again, that the pain of losing one child was too much to ever risk feeling again. But looking at Lily, at this brave, broken, wonderful child, she could not say no. "If you'll have me." Lily threw herself into Catherine's arms and held on with desperate strength. I will. They stayed there for a long time, kneeling in the snow beside Henry's grave, holding each other against the cold and the grief and the terrible weight of moving forward when everyone you love is behind you. Finally, Catherine stood, helped Lily to her feet. "Come on, sweetheart, let's go inside. We have a lot to figure out." Hand in hand, they walked back toward the cabin. Behind them, the graves waited in the snow, silent witnesses to the price of truth. And overhead, the Montana sky stretched endless and blue, indifferent as always to the small dramas of human lives playing out beneath it. 6 months later. Spring came to Oregon with gentle rain and the smell of new grass. Catherine stood on the porch of a small farmhouse, watching Lily play in the yard with a young collie puppy they had bought last month. The child's laughter carried clear across the meadow, bright and pure. The farmhouse was modest, 2 rooms, a loft, barely bigger than the cabin in Redemption Flats. But it was theirs, bought with money from Malcolm Pierce's estate. Malcolm had died as he had lived in those final days, trying to be better than he was. Catherine had found his body behind the courthouse in Redemption Flats, shot twice in the back while trying to hold off 3 of Silas's men. He had given the others time to escape, had bought them the minutes that made the difference between victory and massacre. In his pocket she had found a letter, addressed to his daughter Sarah, confessing everything, the fire, Samuel, his cowardice, and at the end a request that if he died his property in Oregon should go to Catherine and Lily. Give that child the life Samuel never got, he had written. It's the only redemption I can offer. Catherine had honored that request, had sold the Redemption Flats property and used the money to relocate, to start over where no one knew her past, where Lily could grow up without the shadow of violence hanging over every moment. Her shoulder still ached when rain was coming. A rider appeared on the road. Young man. A rider appeared on the road. Young man. Official-looking. He dismounted and approached the porch with careful courtesy. "Mrs. Langford, I have a letter for you, from Chicago." Catherine took the envelope with a sense of foreboding. The return address read, Sarah Wells. She waited until the rider had left before opening it. Lily was still playing, unaware. Catherine sat down on the porch steps and read, "Dear Mrs. Langford, I received your letter about my father's death. Thank you for telling me he died protecting others, that he tried to be good at the end. It helps to know. The authorities questioned me about his involvement in the scandal. I told them what little I knew. Father had kept his past hidden, trying to protect me. But I found something after he died, a letter he left for me. In it, he confessed everything. And at the end he wrote something I think you should know. He said that meeting you, seeing your strength in facing impossible choices, made him realize that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about choosing every day to be better than you were yesterday. He said you taught him that, and that if he died trying to save others, it would be the most worthwhile thing he had ever done. Thank you for helping him find that, even if it came too late to save everyone. The deed to the Oregon property is enclosed. It's yours now. Father would want Lily to have the childhood your son never got. Sincerely, Sarah Wells." Catherine read the letter twice, then carefully folded it and tucked it into her pocket. Across the yard, Lily called out, "Miss Catherine, watch this." The child threw a stick. The puppy chased it with boundless enthusiasm and absolutely no coordination. Lily laughed as the dog tumbled over itself. Catherine stood and walked down the steps. Her shoulder twinged, her leg protested, but she kept walking until she reached Lily, until she could ruffle the child's hair and smile at her joy. "Very impressive. Do you think Papa would have liked the puppy?" "I think he would have loved him." "And your boy Samuel, would he have liked the puppy too?" Catherine's breath caught. They had talked about this before, about Samuel and Thomas, about the family she had lost. Lily knew the stories now, knew the truth. "Yes, sweetheart, Samuel would have loved this puppy, and he would have been your best friend." "I wish I could have met them." "So do I." Catherine knelt and pulled Lily close. "But they're still with us, in here." She touched Lily's chest over her heart. "Every time you laugh, every time you're brave, every time you choose kindness, that's them. That's their legacy." "Do you think they're proud of us?" Catherine looked at this child she had saved, this child who had saved her in return by giving her a reason to keep living. "I think they're very proud." The puppy bounded over and knocked them both into the grass. Lily shrieked with laughter. Catherine let herself fall, let herself laugh, let herself feel something other than the weight of the dead. Above them, clouds moved across a blue sky. Rain was coming, but not yet, not today. Today there was just sunshine and laughter and the warmth of a child's hand in hers. It was not redemption, not forgiveness, not absolution, but it was something. And for now, for today, it was enough. Tseg. The years. "I did it," she whispered. The years. "I did it," she whispered. "I saved her. I gave her the life you never got." The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called out, its voice rising and falling like a question with no answer. Catherine tucked the photograph back into her coat close to her heart, where it had lived for 6 months now. Tomorrow, she would write to the newspapers, would continue providing testimony, would keep doing the slow, painful work of exposing every piece of corruption Thomas had died to reveal. Tomorrow, she would be the warrior again. But tonight, she was just a mother, checking on her sleeping daughter, making sure the doors were locked, banking the fire against the cold. It was a small life, a quiet life, and it was the most precious thing she had ever been given. Catherine climbed into bed and closed her eyes. For the first time in 15 years, she did not dream of fire, did not wake screaming. She dreamed of spring rain and puppy dogs and a little girl's laughter. And in that dream, Thomas and Samuel stood watching from a distance, smiling. They did not speak, did not approach. They simply watched as Catherine slept peacefully, as Lily dreamed innocent dreams, as life continued in all its messy, imperfect beauty. Then, as dreams do, they faded, leaving only the promise of morning, and the certainty that some debts, though never fully paid, could at least be honored. One choice at a time, one day at a time, one life saved, one child protected, one moment of peace carved out of chaos. The snow had melted in Montana. The graves remained. The truth had been exposed. And Catherine Langford, who had been too many people in one lifetime, finally became the person she was meant to be. Not a Pinkerton agent, not a widow, not a warrior, just a mother, doing her best to raise a child in a world that had tried to take everything from them both. It would never be perfect, but it was real, and it was theirs. The end.